Public TV may be the only place to avoid those angry ads, so we're going to have a level-headed discussion about the coming election right here on Capitol View. Welcome to Capitol View and a new season of it, right in time for the election. I'm Bernie Schoenburg from the State-Journal Register in Springfield, and as November 2nd approaches and all of those mean ads we talked about are on the air on those other stations, there really is a lot to talk about and a lot at stake for the state of Illinois and our nation, not to mention the world. Joining me today, some State House veterans, which is great. Kevin McDermott of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch is with us. Welcome, Kevin. Melissa Hahn, Bureau Chief of the Illinois Radio Network, which has, 55 stations across Illinois that her voice goes to. And everyone says she's our reporter in Springfield. And Kurt Erickson, welcome. And Kurt Erickson of Lee Enterprises, which includes papers in Bloomington, Carbondale.
Decatur, Mattoon, Charleston, Quad Cities.
Not bad. We've got the field covered. And if Pat Quinn and Bill Brady could have the field covered like this, they would be happy because they have been crisscrossing the state and coming to our TV and screens and radio airwaves saying really bad things about each other. This has been, other than the 26 years we had Republican governors, and then we had Rod Blagojevich era, and then the Pat Quinn era, and nationally, it looks like we may be tilting Republican, but Illinois has trended Democratic in national races in recent years, including President Barack Obama coming from here. Kevin, where's it going?
Well, I think this is why you're seeing the level of vitriol that you're seeing in this race between, or part of the reason that you're seeing it between Quinn and Brady. You know, some elections you have two candidates that seem to be following the party scripts and seem to be following their issues and doing battle as they have to, and then there's other elections where it seems to be personal, where they seem to genuinely not like each other. And I think this is definitely the latter, and we're getting that not just in the debate.
You think the governor candidates don't like each other?
I think there is a personal animosity there that's driven in part by how nasty some of the ads have gotten. I mean, it's been some of it's been very personal about Bill Brady's taxes and you know, some frankly questionable presentation of the facts. I've thought by Governor Quinn, and so you know it comes out as well in the debates. I mean, there seems to be. What almost seems like personal.
Yeah, well, we did have in a debate this week, Governor Quinn attacking Bill Brady, you know, saying he took votes that helped his construction business. Brady said he's wrong. I didn't even know, but they didn't even help my business. So,
I will say what Kevin is alluding to about so many of these races. I am just horrified at how much these commercials are not just spinning the facts or statements, but they are just blatant, outright lies.
Can you name one?
Well, for example, Pat Quinn saying that Bill Brady said that property value or property taxes would go up. What he said was property valuations would go up.
Yeah, well, that was at the
now,
state
granted,
fair.
it's one word, but it's an important word. The commercials that pretty much say that Brady is going to go out and kill everybody's puppies and kitties. That's more spin.
Yeah,
but
of course, that's so far just on the internet, right?
Talk about taking an issue that is so near and dear and just, you know, souping it up to the point of a frenzy. Deanna DiMuzio's ads against Wayne Rosenthal in the 49th?
Sam McCann.
Sam McCann, sorry. You know, there's and Wayne Rosenthal's, but both of them have issues where something was taken largely out of context. My opponent says that it's our fault that we're out of work. No, that's not exactly what they said.
Yeah, that
you
was
saw
Charlie Landers running for, he's the Democrat
Yes.
running for the now seat held by Betsy Hannigan in the House, running against Wayne Rosenthal.
And then Congressman Mark Kirk, the Republican, and Alexi Janulius, the Democrat
For U.S. Senate.
For U.S. Senate. He's now the state treasurer. That has been obnoxious too. I mean, it's just now it gives us reporters a lot of work because then we get to do stories about what
do the ads really
what
mean?
do the ads mean and where are the inaccuracies.
These are good things for columns, yes.
Great things for columns. So we should be happy because it's job security. But I think it's just
some of us are only happy the day after Election Day. But Kurt,
I'll be happier. I think in the Quinn and Brady race, you see that. Brady not respecting Quinn even though Quinn's been around forever. And Quinn seemingly really disliking Brady. So it's just an interesting dynamic that they're, just really dislike each other.
Central Illinois, Springfield in particular, but the rest of the middle of the state too. State government is very important. State government is about $13 billion in the hole. You have Pat Quinn who says we need the 1% surcharge for education, saying we can't get by without raising some taxes. He claims that they've cut $3 billion. Brady challenges that. But still, he says we've got to borrow some. We've got to, continue to move forward without harming all the services that are paid for by the state. Brady says we need to cut state government a dime out of every dollar, just like you do at home, just like you do at your business, and cut some other taxes, including the sales tax on top of the per gallon tax on gasoline and the estate tax. So does anybody's numbers add up?
Nobody's numbers add up.
None.
Quinn's numbers add up a little more than Brady's do. At least he's not talking about trying to exclusively cut your way out of a deficit. You can't cut your way out of the deficit. I mean, what Brady has never really addressed is how do you cut a deficit that is 3 times larger than the whole state payroll? It doesn't make any sense. But Quinn's 1% surcharge really only affects education. I mean, he's talking about
he pared it down to that
from what he had earlier said. But
right.
I mean, what he's talking about doing there is saying, okay, there is going to be a tsunami on state government here. We're at least going to protect education with this. Now that sort of makes sense, but it's not addressing the tsunami. Actually, the last debate, the only person who really was talking in a way that made numeric sense was the Green Party candidate,
Rich Whitney.
And then the next word out of his mouth was, let's have a state bank, and then you sort of start discounting everything
and
else
legalize
that was
marijuana.
said. Next, I think he's going to start talking about the gold standard.
Rich Whitney, as I mentioned him when he visited our editorial, he has the winning radio voice. No offense, he's got that.
Oh, no, I agree.
And he does make some. He has some interesting.
Make personal attacks.
He has some interesting ideas, including let's put a very minuscule tax on financial transactions that happen at the Board of Trade and the Mercantile Exchange in Chicago, where we have all these national, trading floors for all of these futures, and we could raise $3 or $4 billion. Nobody else is talking about that.
No.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
So anyway, Rich Whitney got 10% of the vote when he ran 4 years ago for governor, and he's from Carbondale, a lawyer. Against Judy Bartopinka, the Republican, and Rod Blagojevich, the already unpopular Democrat, who got just under 50% of the vote to win that race. And this year we've got Rich Whitney as the Green Party candidate. We also have Scott Lee Cohn, the independent, and then there's also Lex Green, who is from Bloomington and who is the Libertarian Party candidate. Where will the none of the above candidates go, or will either of those 3 minor party candidates draw enough votes, and who does that hurt?
I think it's a lot of movement is going to go towards Scott Lee Cohen purely because he's spent lots of money.
He's
on boards, and I think he's doing radio.
Just lent himself another $1 million the other day.
Yeah, and regardless of his background, checkered past, people are responding to that.
What does that say about voters in Illinois?
Boy, they are easily swayed by those commercials, like Blagojevich standing in the middle of the bean field, I think it was, talking about ethanol. Apparently that was a great ad to a lot of
That was
people.
the only thing he ever did for ethanol.
Well, but they are easily swayed.
Right. I'm not sure who is going to lose votes to Cohen. I would assume it's Pat Quinn.
Well, because there's 3 of the third-party candidates, it's a weird dynamic. It's
Right.
hard to figure out. There were a few polls there that seemed to indicate that every time they included these extra candidates, Quinn benefited.
Right, yeah, more
Right.
people, yeah.
But
perhaps people
knows?
who will vote for one of those not major party candidates, although the Green Party is major, are just looking for somebody other than Quinn, and if they don't have to go to Brady, then they'll say, well, the Republicans and the Democrats have screwed things up, so let's go there. We just don't know, do we?
We don't know.
Obviously, just technically, the Green Party or any third party has to get their candidate for governor. If they get 5% or more of the votes in this election, they remain a major party. That lets their candidates get on the ballot easier the next time around. 5,000 signatures instead of 25,000. So I don't know. Do we think Rich Whitney will even surpass the 5% this time with Scott Lee Cohn advertising in the millions?
I think Scott Lee Cohen has a better chance.
But he's an
of it.
independent, so that won't affect
Well,
anybody's
that's true.
party.
Yeah. I think it's going to be real real close for Whitney to keep the party intact.
You know, one of the interesting things, one of the events that Bill Brady was at recently was a Tea Party and Save Our Constitution gathering in front of the State House a few weeks ago on a weekend. Where does the Tea Party movement stand in Illinois? There's another Tea Party Express that's going to actually come through the state in a few days before the election and come to the state fairgrounds yet again.
It's one of these things that's sort of a shadow off in the corners. You know, I mean, as we know, Illinois tends to be a moderate state. Even its Republicans tend to be moderate. But Brady is further right than most Illinoisans. He is obviously trying to embrace this a little bit. I was at that rally you're talking about, and he had they had all the Tea Party, you know, slogans and the shirts, and a woman playing guitar and singing
Something
a Bill
about
Brady song, yeah. And
Bye Bye Barack or something
it
like
was
that.
it was very
Yeah.
Tea Party-ish, and he was kind of eating it up. But you know, when he's out there talking to the big Republican donors and when he's talking to the mainstream Republicans in Illinois, he sort of has to put that on a shelf. And he seems to have figured out how to walk the line. He didn't know how to do it at first. He was hitting all the buttons that you hit as a downstate conservative Republican and not realizing that this was not going to fly anywhere near Chicago and he needs to get those suburbs. He seems to have kind of figured that out. You know, he's really downplaying the social.
It's all about the budget.
It's all about
Yes.
the budget. He's downplaying all the social issue stuff, and he's downplaying, you know, his views on abortion, and we're not talking about gassing puppies anymore and all this other stuff.
Right.
that-
But
Or at least
let's
he
just-
hopes that we're not talking
Yes.
about gassing
For
puppies.
those who haven't been reading it all, I mean, as a legislator and because a veterinarian in his district said, is it possible to euthanize more than one at a time? Can we use a chamber for up
Yes.
to 10 at a time? Cats or dogs, I guess. And he put in a bill to that effect. Realizing then that this was not good publicity for a governor candidate, he withdrew the bill, now says he wouldn't support it, but the Quinn people have put out an ad saying, oh, look at him, he wants to kill
Everybody
puppies.
loves kids and animals. And Quinn is going for the jugular on this because he's got the puppy ad. Granted, it's all internet, but we're talking about it too, so it is making its way to the newscasts. Well, yeah, that was kind of wrapped up for us. How many months ago?
February.
Yes, and then, you know, this surcharge for the children. So he's hitting the two, you know, popular topics,
Right.
and Brady is trying so hard, as Kevin said, to curve all this back to jobs,
Right.
no higher taxes. And that's about all he can do. I think the Tea Party movement is a factor. I don't know that they're going to be huge, but in a race that's this close, Brady's got to pull them in, because if they're disenfranchised, they may go with Lex Green, the libertarian.
Right.
You know, you lose 2% of the vote, that could be a crucial 2% of the vote.
I think this will be a close election, but I mean, most of the polls have shown Brady ahead, but it's been fluctuating wildly, which I think is another.
Won't it be nice to cover something where you don't know the answer by 7?
The Tea Party Express is coming through on the 28th.
28th, I think, in the
Is-
morning at 9 a.m. at the State Fairgrounds.
Is Sarah Palin going to be there? Because
You know,
That would make a
That
big
would
as we
be
tape the
interesting.
show, Sandy Dragoo is the Springfield area coordinator of the Tea Party folks, and she was as yet unaware of who's on the bill, and that she hoped that there would be a big name person there. She's not sure if there will be maybe one or two local speakers, but because it's at 9 in the morning, it's not going to be of that magnitude. So that will be interesting to see. You know, in fairness, I mean, we've mentioned, you know, Brady had these bad bills and he's being attacked for it. Quinn almost lost the Democratic primary because of things including early release of prisoners in a program. The Corrections Department director has since left, although Quinn did not immediately fire him, and he finally got another job and went away. And then there was another rather big story that Bill Brady loves to talk about, that in the middle of all of this financial trouble in the state, Quinn gave raises to members of his top staff, some of whom he argued, including his budget director, took on vast new responsibilities, but it still ended up looking bad. Especially
and don't
when
forget the canoes are.
Yeah, well, there was somebody appointed.
I mean,
and
there's
then
two
given
words
a job,
that,
and
you
then,
know,
you know, yeah,
that's a hook.
And those are the kinds of things that get used. So you've got to say that perhaps Brady's conservative views and his perhaps difficult to understand budget numbers may work against him, but is Quinn's management style and backtracking on certain things he said or seeming inconsistencies is a problem there. So which is worse?
Well, there's been this thrashing quality to the way that Quinn governs. Even those who agree with his policy stances, and some of this is you know, qualifies as political courage. It's pretty admirable stuff if you believe in progressive causes. But even from that standpoint, there has been this Monday I believe this, Tuesday I believe that, Wednesday I'll go back and I'll veto a bill that I pushed and this and that, and then suddenly I'm doing this incomprehensible thing like, giving raises to my inner circle. I think in most elections where there's an incumbent, a lot of it comes down to a referendum on the incumbent, and I think that's clearly the case here. A lot of this support that Brady has, I think, is frustration toward Quinn.
Yeah.
I'm really looking for Brady to have the Quinn Blagojevich ad that Dan Hines didn't in the primary against Quinn. Kept waiting for that ball to drop, and it never did.
When Pat Quinn said he's an honest man, or
Yeah, just,
when they were running for re-election, even though they weren't talking to each other at the time, Quinn and Blagojevich.
Right, like Blagojevich using Topinka and George Ryan dancing together or whatever they
The
were.
It was the
polka.
polka.
Yes.
Yeah.
The polka.
The evil polka.
And the slow motion polka.
Yeah, so I'm waiting for that. I don't know why
Dan
he
sort
wouldn't.
of swore that off, and I think it was, he viewed it as too harmful to his fellow Democrats, but I think you're right. Brady, maybe he's waiting for the last week to pull that out. He's
Yeah.
alluded to it a little, but he hasn't really hit the hammer on that.
Now, I wonder, there was a lot of attention given to the lieutenant governor situation earlier, partly because Scott Lee Cohn, before people knew his full past of a few brushes with the law, won the Democratic nomination for lieutenant governor, then withdrew, and then got back in the race for governor, which is another story. But then Sheila Simon became the candidate, and then you have, in his late 20s, Jason Plummer of Edwardsville, the family of R.P. Lumber, spent $1.5 million of his family's money to help himself advertise and get nominated lieutenant governor. Do these two mean anything anymore? They're both traveling around and saying anything, but have they, does it all come down to who the governor candidates are?
Yes,
Yeah, I did.
absolutely.
Okay, so.
Well, and Sheila Simon, you hardly anybody who ever meets Sheila Simon dislikes her. She's just a very affable, very open, calm, intelligent person. However, her on the bad side is that she really doesn't help raise money, and that's always been her problem. She's fairly honest. She doesn't take, I think, PAC money, or at least didn't when she ran.
But it would all go to the governor
and those
anyway
are all,
at this point.
Well, right, but she's not out there raising dollars and really gaining momentum. She's kind of a folksy person, and I think people just get comfortable with her and then forget about her. Plummer, however, we hardly ever see. He missed 2 major speaking engagements in Springfield.
Yeah, he was supposed to be at a.
It was like the Illinois Coalition Against either domestic violence or sexual assault, and then the healthcare conference. And he skipped out on both of them, the second one with minutes' notice. So, it's hard to take someone seriously when they rarely show up.
But being 6'8", if he showed up, you would be able to see him right away.
From a large distance, yes.
They've gambled that it's more of a liability for him to skip out on things than to show up.
Well, the
which
first rule,
might
yeah. The first
says-
rule
I
is
assume that you're assuming that.
Yeah.
Well, you don't.
Well-
The first rule, the
Do
main
no
thing they
harm.
can do is do no harm. I mean, if they can
Right.
stay out of the way and do no harm, and he's a novice. He's a nice kid. I've talked to him, but he's a novice, and he had a rough patch there at the beginning when he froze up in a television interview in
Right,
Chicago.
and he hasn't disclosed his tax
There's-
returns.
there's
which,
questions, yeah.
because we don't know how his business did in the previous year,
Yeah.
as Bill Brady's business had a down year, so he didn't have to pay federal income tax, which is another big boon for Quinn advertising machine.
Yeah, but I think Kurt's right. They've kind of determined that a little bad press for him not being there is better than having those questions and having them not really answered.
Let me ask this, just the down ballot races of constitutional officers, do we think it's going to be a good Democratic year or Republican year? Lisa Madigan, Attorney General Jesse White, Secretary of State, look like they're going to
Yeah,
probably
those-
make it.
Yes,
But
they're
then
safe.
Those are
Treasurer,
totally-
treasurer,
Treasurer.
and comptroller, you have Judy Bartopinka versus David Miller, State
Those are both
Representative
more in
for
play, I would say.
comptroller in play, and then Dan Rutherford, State Senator,
And Robin Kelly,
versus Robin Kelly,
who
who's
was a state representative, then
from
worked for Alexei
Matteson,
Janulius.
just south of Chicago, and is chief of
Poll
staff in
numbers,
the
poll
Treasury.
numbers are definitely leaning toward Rutherford in that, and Dan Rutherford hasn't missed a publicity opportunity ever in his life.
Well,
So
he's a good speaker on the Republican
yes.
circuit. He can
And he's
rev
been
up a
trying
crowd
for so long. Robin Kelly, this is her first race
well,
for
statewide.
statewide,
Yeah.
and Dan Rutherford's
Well, he
run
ran
for
against Jesse White for
several.
Secretary of State.
It seems like
He
seems like
holds-
he's been perpetually running for something.
Yeah, he has. And
So-
he holds a huge monetary advantage.
He's from the Blooming territory. He
From
lives
the
up Pontiac,
Pontiac.
Shinoa now.
Yeah.
I remember when he was Tom Ewing, former congressman. He was his legislative aide when Tom Ewing was in the Illinois House.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a few years ago. Anyway.
He's been around for a long time. He's has like a million to, a 3-to-1 fundraising advantage at this point.
I've not heard any ads yet for him that I'm aware of. Maybe some radio. But we'll see if, for a candidate at that level of the ballot to do TV statewide would be almost impossible.
Yeah.
But
he's
if you're
done a
talking
lot
that,
of local appearances, and
Yes.
I think that's where he's sinking his money, because like Sheila Simon, he's real good in person. He's very engaging, and he's very Alexi Janulius, pat everybody on the back kind of thing, touch the women's arm, and
Is that what happened?
Oh my gosh! And
You thought it was just you.
no, Alexi Janulius is always touching somebody, and that probably didn't come out so well.
No.
But you know what I mean.
I can
just-
see it on an
being televised.
advertisement
yeah,
now.
just patting the hand or the back. But I think they're dropping a lot of money on Rutherford doing personal appearances,
Okay.
because
We'll see how
that's
that-
where he's best.
Let's talk a bit about President Barack Obama's United States Senate seat that Roland Burris has been the caretaker in, but that will either be Mark Kirk or Alexi Janulius. The minor candidates there are doing less well. Kirk has the credibility problem with embellishing the military record. Janulius has, his primary opponent, David Hoffman, was it David? Started calling him Alexi the unelectable because of problems with the bank and loss of money in a fund in the Bright Start College savings program that Alexi now says is one of the top 5 in the country. Where's this one going? This has been just a mud bath.
And it's the consistently closest race I think I've ever covered. They have been tied literally for months in every poll that comes out. And I think what it comes down to is neither of them is stellar as a candidate. Both of them have some baggage, but neither of them has so much baggage as to be unacceptable. You really, if this were a boxing match, you have two people, who weigh the same to the ounce, basically. And it's that's the one race here that I would not take bets on.
Yep, absolutely. Too close.
Any other thoughts on that? Now,
It could go the way that, whether there's a Republican wave in Illinois.
Right.
right. If this becomes 1994 all over again.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It depends. Speaking of that, what happens with the legislature? The
State
Democrats,
legislature?
the state legislature, the Democrats have had a veto-proof majority in the Senate, and in the House, the Democrats have a majority, but 70 members?
Yep.
And 71 would be, and Tom Cross, the Republican leader, keeps saying, we think we can take enough seats to get it back. And any thoughts on where that's going? Is
The
that possible?
Senate is going to stay in Democratic hands. Just, there are 9 contested races. A couple of them are pretty well entrenched. Up in Chicago, you're not going to see a Republican suddenly come out of nowhere in one of those races. And they need 8, Republicans need 8 to take the chamber back over, and I just don't see that happening.
Right.
They may pick up a few.
I think they'll pick up a few, because there are a couple of races that are awfully contentious. You have Steve Rauschenberger, who used to hold that Senate seat and then decided to run for governor, was unsuccessful.
Elgin.
And then he's running against Democrat Mike Noland. And that's been a rough race with a lot of money. So that one I think could go, and it would probably be good for the Democrats actually to lose a couple of seats, because they've devolved into this infighting problem because they had so much of a majority there. And
I'm sure
and I
it
think
would-
it would be good for them to lose that, because then I think they'll come together and be a more solid
I'm sure not
caucus.
everyone, on the Democratic side would
Well,
agree
no,
with your view.
but you understand what I'm saying. You get
Especially if
too many
Brady
votes.
wins.
If you have a super majority, a veto-proof majority, you think you've got everything locked up, and that's when the factions start.
Yeah, so do we think Speaker Madigan will still be Speaker Madigan? The Democrats hold their majority?
There's more of a chance of the House falling to the Republicans, but there's still not much of a chance. He's going to lose some seats. That much I think even they've accepted that that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to lose a majority.
Yeah.
And he's pulled in an awful lot of money recently, but how do you spend that in the last,
Now,
11 days?
In central and western Illinois, I'm not sure if everybody's been watching as closely as I have, because it comes into Springfield, a congressional race between Congressman Phil Hare, who's been in 4 years since Lane Evans retired because of illness, the Democrat from Rock Island, and Bobby Schilling of Kelowna. He owns a pizza restaurant in Moline. All of a sudden, he keeps getting more money, and there's advertising from third-party groups for him saying Phil Hare doesn't care about the Constitution over health care, and it's kind of a very partisan clash of what Republicans are saying and what Democrats are saying. Can Hare hold that, or do we have any
And that's the
idea?
shocker, because the polls have had Schilling ahead for months, and no one
Well,
expected
sometimes
that.
close, but
Well,
yeah,
sometimes,
yeah.
but you're talking about the most recent poll had another 7-point lead. So that's kind of a shocker. Schilling comes out of nowhere in a district that was specifically designed to help the Democrats.
Right.
And
It even takes in
Like
part.
it looks like a snake.
it
looks like a
is.
rock.
It is.
Some
I mean,
people-
you
some
can't
people
even
say-
really call it a district.
Some
I
people
don't know.
say it's one of the
It's
most
Italy.
gerrymandered.
It's
it looks like,
Italy.
I think it's a claw.
It looks,
Okay, yeah.
It is
It's
Yeah, it's
crazy.
along the Mississippi River, all along
That-
western Illinois.
that district
and
is
then
designed-
It goes down about a street in Springfield, takes in some of the east side, Democratic area, goes down the highway and takes in most of Decatur.
It
Right.
looked like somebody flung ink at a wall.
Exactly, and let it dribble. Yeah, that's the one that's the shocker. I would have never guessed that Schilling had such a chance. I thought he would make a good showing, but he certainly would have no chance of
This
winning,
does
and
say
here we
something-
are.
This does say something about blogging days, because Phil Hare had a lot of public forums, including one on
Yes.
health care in Quincy, and Tea Party folks showed up, and a blogger from St. Louis showed up, and they kept badgering him, do you think it's constitutional to make everybody buy insurance? And after about apparently the 10th time of this being asked, he talked about parents finding out their kid is sick and they just don't know how to pay for it. And he said, I don't care about the Constitution there. And the blogger said, from Missouri, jackpot. And then now there's a group out of Des Moines, which apparently has a post office box as its address, is running $500,000
Yeah,
in
and there
ads
was a context
with
to
that
him
stuff.
saying that, but those are a couple of words that should never come out of an elected official's
Well,
mouth
was
under any
it,
circumstances.
I don't care about the
I
Constitution
don't
or the
care about the
Constitution?
On
Okay.
that, I mean,
Yeah.
and he also was
He
saying,
also said something
he
about
also
the
says clearly he
Constitution is
thinks
wrong
it
or
is
something.
Oh,
constitutional.
no, there was a context,
Okay.
but
He thinks it is constitutional.
Today you can take that out
But
of
it's been
context
used.
and-
It's
Oh,
been
yes.
used by Bobby Schilling. It's certainly used against those who don't like Phil Hare. It made this
You
is the
just
kind of
said
thing
it.
that
You can't run for office now, Bernie. They'll clip that out.
Don't
That's a
worry.
classic Tea Party. That's
well,
the
and-
biggest evidence of the Tea Party in Illinois, I think, is in the 17th district, because Schilling is basically saying Pelosi. And
Yeah.
that's his
Yeah.
platform.
right,
And,
Phil Hare votes with Nancy Pelosi. She shouldn't represent this district. He actually said that just in
yeah,
Springfield.
and that's his campaign. And
Do we think it'll be successful in this overwhelmingly Democratic district?
I'm still,
Yeah, he's up in the polls. Yeah.
yes, but I still,
It
still
also
think
depends
Phil
who
Hare-
gets polled and if Democrats get their base out.
Hey, can you
Well,
imagine
yes,
trying to poll that district? With the
It's
way
a
it's-
difficult,
I don't
Well,
who has cell phones?
Democrats
How do you
come
find
home
them?
late,
Yeah.
Republicans under poll. So if that's true, then Schilling really does have a chance. And that would just shock me. That's my shocker.
Well, I think that many of us may be shocked this year, but that's the wonderful thing about the American system. And with that, we're just about out of time. I would remind people, early voting is going on, and absentee voting is going on, and November 2nd is the election. And we'll all be working that night, and
Working
hopefully we'll
late.
have some interesting times. So for Kevin McDermott and Melissa Hahn and Kurt Erickson, I'm Bernie Schoenburg, and I'd like to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Capitol View.